Question. Do spirits see things as distinctly as we do? Answer. More distinctively, for their sight penetrates what yours cannot penetrate. Nothing obscures it. Question. Do spirits perceive sounds? Answer. Yes, they perceive sounds that your obtuse senses cannot perceive. Question. Does the faculty of hearing reside in the whole of a spirit's being like the faculty of sight? Answer. All the perceptive faculties of a spirit are attributes of his nature and form part of his being. When he is clothed with a material body, his perceptions reach him only through the channel of his bodily organs. But the perceptions of a spirit, when restored to the state of freedom, are no longer localized. Question. The perceptive faculties being attributes of a spirit's nature, is it possible for him to withdraw himself from their action? Answer. A spirit only sees and hears what he chooses to see and hear. This statement, however, is to be taken in a general sense, and mainly as regards spirits of the higher orders, for imperfect spirits are compelled to see and hear, and often against their will, whatever may be useful for their amelioration. Question. Are spirits affected by music? Answer. Do you mean the music of your earth? What is it in comparison with the music of the celestial spheres, of that harmony of which nothing in your earth can give you any idea? The one is to the other as the howl of the savage is to the most lovely melody. Spirits of low degree, however, may take pleasure in hearing your music, because they are not yet able to appreciate anything more sublime. Music has inexhaustible charms for spirits owing to the great development of their sensitive qualities. I mean celestial music, than which the spiritual imagination can conceive of nothing more exquisitely sweet and beautiful. Question. Are spirits sensible of the beauties of nature? Answer. The beauties of nature are so different in the different globes that spirits are far from knowing them all. They are sensible of them in proportion to their aptitude for appreciating and comprehending them. But for spirits of a high degree of advancement, there are beauties of general harmony in which beauties of detail are, so to say, lost sight of. Question. Do spirits experience our physical needs and sufferings? Answer. They know them because they have undergone them, but they do not, like you, experience them materially. They are spirits. Question. Do spirits experience fatigue and the need of rest? Answer. They cannot feel fatigue as you understand it, and consequently they have no need of your corporal rest, because they have no organs whose strength required to be restored. But a spirit may be said to take rest inasmuch as he is not constantly in a state of activity. He does not act materially. His action is altogether intellectual, and his resting is altogether moral. That is to say, that there are moments when his thought becomes less active and is no longer directed to any special object. And this constitutes for him a state which is really one of repose, but a kind of repose which cannot be likened to that of the body. The sort of fatigue which may be felt by spirits is proportionate to their inferiority, for the higher their degree of elevation, the less is their need of rest. Question. When a spirit says that he suffers, what is the nature of the suffering he feels? Answer. Mental anguish, which causes him tortures far more painful than any physical sufferings. Question. How is it then that spirits sometimes complain of suffering from cold or heat? Answer. Such sensations on their part are caused by the remembrance of sufferings endured by them in the earthly life, and are sometimes as painful as though they were real. But complaints of that nature are often only figures by which, for lack of any better means of description, they endeavor to express the situation in which they find themselves. When they remember their earthly body, they experience the same sort of impression which makes you feel for a few moments when you have taken off a cloak as though you still had it upon your shoulders. Theoretical explanation of the nature of sensation in spirits. And the question is, the body is the instrument of pain, of which, if not the primary cause, it is at least the immediate cause. The soul possesses the faculty of perceiving the pain thus caused. The perception of pain is, therefore, the effect of this action of the soul. The remembrance of pain retained by a spirit may be very painful. But, I guess this isn't a question, but cannot exercise any physical action. The tissues of the soul cannot be disorganized either by cold or heat. The soul can neither freeze nor burn. But do we not constantly see that the remembrance or the apprehension of physical pain may produce all the effects of reality, and may even occasion death? We know that recently amputated patients often complain of feeling pain in the limb they have lost. Yet it is evident that the amputated limb cannot really be the seat nor even the point of departure of the pain felt, which is due solely to the action of the brain that has retained and reproduced the impression of the pain formerly experienced by them. It may therefore be inferred that the suffering felt by spirits after death is of a similar nature. A careful study of the perispirit, which plays so important a part in all spirit phenomena, the indications afforded by apparitions, whether vaporous or tangible, the state of the spirit at the moment of death, the striking pictures presented by the victims of suicide and of capital punishment, by the spirits of those who have been absorbed in carnal enjoyments, and a great variety of other facts, have thrown new light on this question, and have given rise to the explanations of which we offer the following summary. The perispirit is the link which unites the spirit with the material body. It is drawn from the surrounding atmosphere, from the universal fluid. It participates at once in the nature of electricity, of the magnetic fluid, and of inert matter. It may be said to be the quintessence of matter. It is the principle of organic life, but it is not that of intellectual life, the principle of which is in the spirit. It is also the agent of all the sensations of the outer life. Those sensations are localized in the earthly body by the organs which serve as their channels. When the body is destroyed, those sensations become general. This explains why a spirit never says that he suffers in his head or in his feet. But we must take care not to confound the sensations of the perispirit, rendered independent by the death of the body, with the sensations experienced through the body, for the latter can only be understood as offering a means of comparison with the former, but not as being analogous to them. When freed from the body, a spirit may suffer, but this suffering is not the suffering of the body, and yet it is not a suffering exclusively moral, like remorse, for example, for he complains of feeling cold or hot, although he suffers no more in summer than in winter. And we have seen spirits pass through flames without feeling any painful effects therefrom, temperature making no impression upon them. The pain which they feel is therefore not a physical pain in the proper sense of that term. It is a vague feeling perceived in himself by a spirit, and which he himself is not always able to account for, precisely because his pain is not localized and is not produced by any exterior agents. It is a remembrance rather than a reality, but a remembrance as painful as though it were a reality. Nevertheless, spirit suffering is sometimes more than a remembrance, as we shall see. Observation has shown us that the perispirit at death disengages itself more or less slowly from the body. During the first few moments which follow dissolution, a spirit does not clearly understand his own situation. He does not think himself dead, for he feels himself living. He sees his body beside him. He knows that it is his, and he does not understand that he is separated from it. And this state of indecision continues as long as there remains the slightest connection between the body and the perispirit. One who has committed suicide said to us, "No, I am not dead," and added, "And yet I feel the worms that are devouring my body." Now, most assuredly, the worms were not devouring his perispirit, still less could they be devouring the spirit himself. But as the separation between the body and the perispirit was not complete, a sort of moral repercussion transmitted to the latter the sensation of what was taking place in the former. Repercussion is perhaps hardly the word to be employed in this case, as it may seem to imply an effect too nearly akin to materiality. It was rather the sight of what was going on in the decaying body, to which he was still attached by his perispirit, that produced in him an illusion which he mistook for reality. Thus, in his case, it was not a remembrance, for he had not during his earthly life been devoured by worms. It was a feeling of something which was actually taking place. We see by the examination of the case here alluded to the deductions that may be drawn from an attentive observation of facts. During life, the body receives external impressions and transmits them to the spirit through the intermediary of the perispirit, which constitutes probably what is called the nervous fluid. The body, when dead, no longer feels anything because there is in it no longer either spirit or perispirit. The perispirit, when disengaged from the body, still experiences sensation, but as sensation no longer reaches it through a limited channel, its sensation is general. Now, as the perispirit is, in reality, only an agent for the transmission of sensations to the spirit by whom alone they are perceived, it follows that the perispirit, if it could exist without a spirit, would no more be able to feel any sensation than is the body when it is dead. And it also follows that the spirit, if it had no perispirit, would be inaccessible to any painful sensation, as is the case with spirits who are completely purified. We know that in proportion as the spirit progresses, the essence of its perispirit becomes more and more etherealized, whence it follows that the influence of matter diminishes in proportion to the advancement of the spirit, that is to say, in proportion as his perispirit becomes less and less gross. But it may be urged, it is through the perispirit that agreeable sensations are transmitted to the spirit as well as disagreeable ones. Therefore, if the purified spirit is inaccessible to the latter, he must also be to the former. Yes, undoubtedly so, as far as regards those which proceed solely from the influence of the matter which is known to us. The sound of our instruments, the perfume of our flowers, produce no impressions upon spirits of the highest orders, and yet they experience sensations of the most vivid character, of a charm indescribable for us, and of which it is impossible for us to form any idea, because we are, in regard to that order of sensations, in the same position as that in which men born blind are in regard to light. We know that they exist, but our knowledge is inadequate to explain their nature or the mode in which they are produced. We know that spirits possess perception, sensation, hearing, sight, and that these faculties are attributes of their whole being, and not, as in men, of a part of their being. But we speak in vain to understand by what intermediary these faculties act. Of this we know nothing. Spirits themselves can give us no explanation of the matter, because our language can no more be made to express ideas which are beyond the range of our comprehension than the language of savages can be made to furnish terms for expressing our arts, our sciences, or our philosophic doctrines. In saying that spirits are inaccessible to the impressions of earthly matter, we must be understood as speaking of spirits of very high order, to whose etherealized envelope there is nothing analogous in our lower sphere. It is different with spirits whose perispirit is of denser quality, for they perceive our sounds and our odors, though no longer through special parts of their personality, as they did during life. The molecular vibrations may be said to be felt by them throughout their whole being, reaching thus their common sensorium, which is the spirit himself, although in a different manner, and causing perhaps a different impression, which may produce a modification of the resulting perception. They hear the sound of your voice, and yet are able to understand us without the need of speech, by the mere transmission of thought. And this penetration is the more easy for them in proportion as they are more dematerialized. Their sight is independent of our light. The faculty of vision is an essential attribute of the soul, for whom darkness has no existence, but it is more extended, more penetrating, in those whose purification is more advanced. The soul, or spirit, therefore, possesses in itself the faculty of all perceptions. During our corporal life, these are deadened by the grossness of our physical organs, but in the extra-corporal life they become more and more vivid as our semi-material envelope becomes more and more etherealized.